All right, we're back, and it's COMP2068, week 10, lesson 10, part 2, and we just finished doing our scoreboard. We're going to go into our finite state machine, but before we go there, really quickly, I want to take a look at some online resources that I've already given you, just to remind you where they are. If you want to look at a really good site, we can get some resources. There's this opengameart.org site that's actually down right now. That kind of sucks, because that's a really good site to go get stuff from. Another place that I would recommend, that we've kind of seen this before, and again, there's a couple of, when I go to 3D games, even though it's under 3D games, there's something called CG Textures, this site here. It's www.cgtextures.com, and this place you can get a lot of really cool like background textures. Like for example, let's take a look at roads for a second, right? So here's some, and they also have tiles as well, like roads that are already pre-tiled for you. Here's tiles as an example, right? If I go to tiles and I go to plain tiles, right, as an example, you can actually use this as a background, and the great thing is, right,
it won't look like it's changing.
A lot of it doesn't, look like it's changed. Like this one might be pretty good.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of all, they've been created that way. But let's go and look at some other things, like roads as an example. So you're making, I don't know, some kind of, I've seen this a lot before, side scroller with roads. So you're actually driving a car on the side, on the road. That might be an easy thing to do. So if I look at dirt roads, take a look, right? There's some really good, like this one. This one might look like a continuous road, right? Or this one, right? And that's where it says, now there's different sets. This one says tiled, and it's huge. You want to get the biggest one you can, right? Like this one. And obviously you don't want to let the guy go on the rough. And if he does go on the rough, if you're going to make a side scroller like that, let's look at this one. Here's a couple of options, right? Here's your texture. So you're driving a car, he's on the regular road, and it looks like it might map out to the other side, maybe, right? And you'd have to check it to see how it works. Like, actually do the side scrolling and see how it works, if it looks really, if it looks okay. And there's different ones, by the way. If you notice, there's like this one, right, which we have that bush. This one, which is a continuous side scroll. Look at this one. It's really long. Might be okay, right? And then what you do with this one is, if you look at it carefully, you make it so that you watch for collisions. If he leaves the road, if you're going to do a side scroller, and he goes to the bush, you didn't make him take damage. So make the car kind of rough up, go, 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 go. Give it different sounds when he comes off the road. So you can make a collider. When he goes off a certain level, he starts making these noises whenever he goes off, right? So that's kind of a cool thing. So I've seen road games like that, but you can get a lot of these textures and stuff right here, like right in this CG Textures places as well. They have roofing, rust, scrap. They have all kinds of water, windows, wood, X-rays, buildings, all kinds of things. There's definitely some ground. Like if you want to look at snow, if you're making a snow game,
Do you have
right?
anything for sky or space?
They don't have sky and space. I haven't seen that a lot. They have, excuse me, they have different kind of skies. Like for example, here's a partial sky, right? And they have one of these, but the problem is it doesn't continue from here to here, right? You have to find you can look up stuff that says, seamless background, right? So if I go seamless background texture, right? Then it'll get you to this site here where you can actually see there's quite a few of them that are seamless, that continue from one side to the other, and you won't be able to tell as often. Like this one might be good, or this one might be good.
Oh, that's actually pretty cool.
Right? And there's all kinds of really cool ones. Sometimes the other thing you want to do is you want to reduce the chance of the background being too busy. Like sometimes you may want to add a little bit of alpha or fade it out in the background just a little bit because it's too stark. If your ship in the background, like if you use this kind of background and your ship is black, right, it's bad, right? It would have to be something that stands out in the background. So be careful of that too, right? Obviously this one scroll very well. So again, maybe and these are some background ideas. So seamless scrolling or scrollable background textures, right? So again, this one, there's one.
None of these will scroll. You would notice the change in design is very obvious.
This might be okay,
Yeah, that would be, and the one at the end also would be.
right? This might be okay.
Yeah, but the one in the middle,
Um,
that would be okay with the audio.
the money. See, this might be okay.
Mm.
Right? See this one? So again, you can see some of these they exist already online. You have to do any work.
So that is
That's
great.
okay.
That's built for a game.
That's made for kind of a crazy background scroller, right? You have to clean it up a little bit, but certainly you can find stuff on here. Here's another one, right?
That's pretty cool.
You know, for a background, right? So it's not like you can't find stuff that's already pre-built for you. You don't have to do a lot of work, right? Okay, let's get back to this. So we did all this stuff. Now, how the hell, right, would I create my, I want to prepare myself to have different states. Well, one of the great things to do is, I would have to create my own folder for my states. I got to think of, first of all, what these states I'm talking about are. And for you to understand a state machine, you have to understand what states are. So let's talk about states just for a bit before we move on, because otherwise you won't understand what I'm talking
I
about.
don't understand them.
That's good. Let's talk about it. All right, so I'm going to just kick off a new file here to draw with you. I'm going to draw. Let's draw it together, right? Okay, so here's our canvas, which we're going to draw with. And I've got I'm going to use a couple boxes here. So this will be our first state. Let's just make it, so it's by 640 by 480, let's say. And inside here, we're going to label this thing. Here's my label. I'm going to call this my menu state. Right, so here's my menu state. Okay, so I start my game. I'm in my menu state, right? And now I want to move to my game state. So I have a game state. So here's my game state. Okay. And then from my game state, I want to go to my game over state, right? So let's move this over here too. Here's my game over state. Game over. Now they're the same screen. The screen is going to be swapped in, right? So I'm going to go my menu, I'm going to go to my game, and I'm going to go to my game over, and then I'm going to go back to my game. But well, I also have to have an instruction state in there. So where would I put that? So let's just do another copy and paste. Right, so here's my instruction state. So that's going to be another option on the side here. Let's kind of move all this over here like this, right? So this one would be my instruction state, right? Right, and let's put this inside here. Yeah, I don't have to be perfect there. Instruction state. Okay, cool. So let me ask you this question. I enter my game. I'm going to draw some arrows now. Right, and maybe some lines. And I'm going to enter my game in here, right? And let's wonder if I can have, if there actually are some arrows. There's an arrow line. So here's an arrow, right? That's not cool. Let's add an arrow line. It's actually an arrow here. There we go. Here's an arrow. And let's add some thickness to this thing. I'll go 4. And let's add some color to the background of it. I'll make it some gray color. And it's not showing up, unfortunately. I don't know why. Modify canvas color, make it transparent for a second. Nope. Modify canvas color, go back to white. And I'm not seeing my arrow. That's weird. That's usually my stroke style is pretty good, right? So spacing, shape. I spent too much time on this. Size and edge. Sure. And it doesn't do anything, so we're just going to get rid of it and just do regular lines. Here's a line. So there's my first arrow. And you know what? Let's make this line a little thicker so we can see what I'm talking about here. So I come into my game state like this, right? Wouldn't I? Can I come into my game state? There I am. I'm into my game state. And from my game state, I can go to my 2 places. I can go to my instruction state, or I can go to my game state. Huh? This is kind of like a flow of my code. Think about this in real life when you're not making a game anymore, but rather you're making some kind of application, right? You actually do this in project management. You would do the same kind of idea. How does the user flow through everything? So here's my menu, here's my game, here's my instructions. Okay, cool. Here's my question. Can I go from my instructions to my game?
Yeah.
I think the answer would be yes. I should be able to do this, right? I'll leave that to you. How do you do that? Because we're not going to cover instructions today. We're just going to cover game states. All right, I could be able to do this. I can't go back from my game to my instructions. Typically, that's not done. Can I go back from my instructions to my menu? Probably. That makes sense. So I'm probably going to draw another line up here that's kind of showing kind of a path to how I can build my game out, right? All right, cool. So I can go back this way. Can I go back from my game right back to my menu? No. I have to go through a game over state. So I'm going to kind of go to here, and typically it's like this, right? Can I go from my game over back to my instructions? Probably not. I can't go. I could be able to go back to my menu. So maybe what I can do is I can draw from my game over state. I kind of pick this, move this aside for a second. I could make a line that goes back to my menu, like this. Draw this line here that goes back up here. So I could do that as well, right? This can be a possibility, right? But also, my most likely choice is for me to go back to my game and try again. So what is my game state is? It just tells me the flow of how my game works. Now I'm just designing this right here. Every game is going to have a different game state. For example, I have a game state here. Maybe this is a level 1 state. Maybe it's got to go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, and there's different states for the levels, right? And each of these levels has a path that goes back either to the menu or to the game. Maybe there's a sub-menu that goes, if you have an inventory or some kind of options, that's another state. If you want to take the game and put it on its side and pause it, stop everything moving, how would I stop or pause the game? What would I do? The easiest way to do it. Stop the update. Stop the game loop, right? If I stop the game loop, nothing gets updated. I don't get points. My stuff doesn't move. You know, all that stuff stops, right? So I can stop the game loop. There's a couple ways to stop the game loop. I can, because right now I have an event listener that listens for tick. I can remove the event listener for the game loop, right now, temporarily, to stop the game or pause the game. And then I can add it back in using the same handler to start the game up again if I want to do a pause and start, right? There's other ways of doing it too. But this is the most common thing we do. We stop the game loop, or we let the game loop stop. Now here's a challenge. If I stop my main game loop, right? If I stop my main game loop, there's a problem because my main game loop might govern other things, like my menu. It still has to work. So my main game loop still has to work. Maybe I just got to stop updates from my game somehow. So my game doesn't move anymore. It just stops, right? So I remove my update function or make it disable. I disable the check on my update for my whole game, right? You know, if I do that, if I have a pause state. But really, basically what we do is when we create states, we create screens. Think about them as different screens.
Yeah.
I have my initial screen, is my menu. I stop my screen. I collapse my screen down, right? And I go to my game screen. I play that. It's almost like a container of its own. That's why I created my game containers. Because it's easy for me to say, wipe everything gone and start over again. I can use my almost the same structure. Okay, so if I need containers and keeping the same idea of moving between one screen and another, I might need buttons to do all this stuff. I need a button to go from my menu to my game, like a start button. I need a button or some kind of event that goes from my game to my game over. I have to lose, obviously. I need a button to go back and try again. I need a button to go from here back to my menu, like start over, go to my menu screen. I need a button to go from my instruction screens back to my menu screen. I need a button to go from my menu to my instruction screen. These are all the different things you can do with these interactions. Now, I'm not going to put all these in place for you guys today, right? I'm going to put some of them there. But again, you can think of other paths in order for you to kick off your game. And this is what we're going to be doing. Okay, so the first thing before we create our finite state machine, I want to encapsulate my game. Now, watch closely because this is a bit of trouble, right? Right, so first I have my objects folder. I don't want to have everything in my objects folder. I want to create a new folder called states. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to add folder. I'm going to create a new folder called states. It's my game states, right? Okay, cool. Now I want to do a couple things. I want to create a few game states. One of them is going to be called my game play state, right? So I'm going to right click. I'm going to add. I'm going to go new TypeScript file, right? And in here, I want to create a new game play state, right? Okay, so I'm going to call this game play. Or I could call this simply a play state, like play, right? Okay, cool. Well, let me do the module for you so you can figure this out. Here's one option, module, and I call this states. These are all my states modules, right? And inside my states module, I have a class that I'm going to export, right? My class is called play, right? Okay, cool. And it's, of course, a class here, class. So it's my play class. Okay, cool. I like this idea. And if I look at the JavaScript that this creates, it creates something called a closure, like we talked about before, right? This anonymous closure, we have a function that's an unnamed function. I'm passing in a variable called states that goes into my closure. And I'm also kicking off my value. If you notice, there's an anonymous self-executing closure, right, that encompasses all the stuff that's in here. Right? This is good because what it does is encapsulates all my variables, and that's how all the modules work. So from just these lines, I do all this. Cool. Now, let me think about this. I'm going to do some stuff. I want to put my game, I want to convert my game into a class. How do I do this? Well, the first thing I got to do is I got to look at my game itself. My game is made up of a couple of options. One is this, all these things. Well, you know what this is? All this is right here, right? This whole thing is my constructor. So all this stuff in my main function is my constructor. So right now I'm going to take all this stuff out, and I'm going to copy it to my constructor in my play state. So now I have to create my constructor. So here's my constructor. And in my constructor, I'm going to have all this stuff. Oh, okay, this is cool. I've got my game, and that's kind of cool too, right? But you know what? I want it to be encapsulated. I don't want anything to do with a global game variable, right? I never want to kind of create a new game variable again, right? Everything should be part of my class. Okay, that's cool. Well, that means that, going back to my game state, that means all this stuff has to be inside my game as well. Like all these, this game container. I don't need my asset loader and my stats and my stage. All this stuff is part of the whole game itself. But this game container definitely has to be part of what I'm going to use as an object, right? So all this stuff has to come with me, right? So let's take all this and put it into my play state. And here, before the constructor, inside my class, I'm going to pull all this stuff. And I have to fix it up because I can't use the keyword var anymore, right? So here's game, and here's plain, right? And here's island. And here's my all these vars are going to come out because these are now instance variables, right? A bit of trouble to do this the first time, right? Okay, cool. So I've got my stuff. These are my instance variables. Okay, so I'm encapsulating my game into its own class, right? You might think it's crazy, and I'm a mad scientist right now, so bear with me. So these are all public for now. If I can actually spell public properly, right? And the same thing goes with all this. So public, 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 public. Let's leave all this public for now. Okay, cool. So all this stuff is public. All right. I've got this stuff that gets created, but right now the reason why I have this whole thing working and it's not giving me errors is because all this has already been created on the public scope, right? So I don't want to do that on the global scope. So I'm going to X out of all this for now. So I'm going to get rid of these so I can see my errors right now. because it's important for me to do this as I code. Okay, so I'm going to get a bunch of errors now in a second. Let's go back to my play state. Oh, right, these are all my errors. Okay, I got to fix these. Well, how do I fix them? I got to go this. I can use the this keyword, right? Because I'm actually encapsulating my game. I go this dot game, and this dot ocean, and this dot game, this dot ocean. And you might say, hey Tom, why don't you just find and replace? This could be catastrophic if you don't do it right. I choose to not do that. Right? Cool. Cloud is a local variable. It's okay. Clouds. This is good. My scoreboard and my game. Right? So I got rid of all my errors here, right? Because all my errors here are based on my local variables now. These are local variables to my game state. Okay, cool. Now my JavaScript looks like this. Right? Now, this is cool, but I don't have an update function. I need that. And you know what I'm going to call my update function? Well, go back to game. I'm going to do all this in my game loop. All this stuff in my game loop, which is right here. This is going to be my update function, my whole thing, this whole thing here, right? Except for I'm not going to update the stage in my game. I'm going to let that happen in the main game loop. But I'm going to include everything else. So I'm going to take this whole thing. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to my play. And I'm going to go back down underneath this. This is my constructor function. So I'm going to say constructor, because it's going to be big, eh? Constructor end. And in here, I'm going to create my update. Okay. And in here, this instead of function, it's not going to be called. I don't need to use the word function because it's a method. Right? It's going to be a public function right now that I'm going to use. And instead of game loop, it's going to be called update. Right? Okay, now I got to go through the this keyword again because this is the next game I got to play with the this keyword. So this, I can't get rid of all these errors. Boom, 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 boom. All this stuff here. Get rid of it all. And I got to do this because, and the reason why is there's an important piece here that if I don't do, I'm going to mess up here. Okay? Cool. Sound stop, lives, stage, update, stats end. Okay, ooh, I don't need this stuff. So I definitely don't need stats end. I'm not going to measure my stats here. Right? And I don't need a stage update because I'm going to let that happen in the main game loop. Right? So here's my I don't need my begin metering either. I don't need to begin metering or any of this stuff. This stuff all has to happen in my update function, right? But I don't have to have, I'm just going to kind of tab in here a little bit. And this right here is my update method end, right? So I want to keep track of each of these curly braces or else I'm going to get messed up, right? Is my, and I'll kind of make some separators here too. So say public methods. Kind of put a separator in place because I'm gonna have an issue pretty soon if I don't do it. Okay. Here's my, and maybe my constructor. I'll separate them. And again, these are just comments, but I can easily see them later on. Instance variables. And I'm going to put this as my play state. Okay. Cool, cool. Looks good so far, right? Missing stuff. Can I do my check collision if I don't have access to a check collision method? No. So I got to include that in here too. So I got to go back to my game. And by the way, this game loop, right? If you notice, I'm going to wipe this out in a second. And the only thing I need in here is I'm going to update my game by calling my game in here one time. Right? So watch, I'm just going to wipe all this stuff out. I'm going to do one of these. Watch. It's going to be my gameplay. So it's going to be play. I'm going to put this in there as a comment right now. Play.update. Okay? I don't have that capability yet, but I will. My main in here, this main function right here, it's going to go away too because all this main function, it's going to be gone. So I'm going to kind of kill this function as well. And in here, I'm going to instantiate my, somewhere down in my main function, I'm going to instantiate my, my play state, somewhere in here. Okay, so that's one thing I'm going to do. So here's my game loop now. I only have my play update, my stage update. This is how big my game loop is going to be from now on. Nice and small, right? Okay, I need all this stuff. This function check collision and this function distance. I need these two things. So I'm going to grab these two functions right here, right? And I'm going to X them out. Here they are. They're gone. They gone, right? I'm going to go back to my game state, and I need to put them in before my update because they're looking for a collision, right? So inside my public methods area, and here's my update method, which is pretty important. But inside here, I'm going to put in my check collision and all this stuff. So here's my function for distance. For now, I'm going to just keep in here. They're all going to be public for a reason. We're going to talk about that later on. Okay, and here's the end of my, let's say, distance end, right? My distance function with P1 and P2, this is self kind of, it makes it on its own. I don't need anything else in here. This one is going to need some help though. And if I notice, maybe I can tab this in just to make it more beautiful. And definitely this needs some help because it's got this dot plane and this dot plane. All that's got to be in there too, right? This dot distance because it's a function. This dot plane. This dot scoreboard. This dot scoreboard, right? These are all good things that I've got going on here. Now I might as well tab in because this is the end of the collision. So collision or check collision end. Check collision end. To keep track of that. But all this stuff has to be tabbed in a little bit just to make it nicer, look neater. And this would be my check collision method. Right, so it's my check collision method and a couple methods in here. And I can do all this now. Okay. And of course I've got to use the this keyword in front of check collision because it's an internal method now as opposed to how it was before. Okay, it looks like I've done most of it. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at my code now. This is the JavaScript code I've put in here for my game, for my play state. Do I need anything else, guys? What do you think? It's all my stuff. So basically, I've taken my game, I've ripped it apart, right, and I've put in my play state in its own kind of class, and I don't need any of this anymore because this is part of my game. It's actually encapsulated in my game for now, right? All right, this is dangerous crap. When you see this, I just made a major change, and I did it all at once, right? So before I up to GitHub, right? Because this would be a major upset if it was bad, right? You know, a major upset when you play, you know, you watch football, it's major upset. This would be my major upset right here if this didn't work out. Because I'm trying something new, right? How do I test this thing out? Well, first of all, I got to do all my piece parts. I need to do all my regular things. One thing is, I got my play state. I got to add that into my index.html file. And I got to add that in after all this stuff is done. Because you know what? I need all these objects to create my states. So I'm going to go right at the bottom here. I'm going to put my state in here. And my play state, here's my play state. I'm going to put that all the way into the bottom. Got some other errors too going on. I got to explore those errors. So that's the first thing. And then I got to go in here and I got to do the same thing in my game. Right? So I'm going to go my game. I'm going to go down here. Right? And you know what? I've got in my solution explorer, I'm going to drag and drop my play state underneath everything else. So now I got that. Okay, cool. Now let's see my solution explorer still got errors? No. Yes. Hold on, my scoreboard has an error. What's my scoreboard have a problem with? My game. Well, because game was a global object before, and now game is a local object that's only visible inside of its class. So you know what I need to do with my scoreboard? I need to pass the game into it somehow, right? That's one thing I can do. So I can pass that into my constructor, right? So if I pass this into the constructor, I'm going to make my own method or my own game, but it's going to be a private variable in my scoreboard. I'm going to call it game with an underscore. So my internal game container, and it's of course going to be a create.js type container object, not call a filter, container. So that's the first thing I need to do. And then I need to pass this in here. So I'm listing for a game container, right? That's of type create.js.container, right? And now it takes away that problem there. But it adds a problem in my play state. Because when I call my new scoreboard, I got to pass in a reference to game. And of course, it can't be just game. It's got to be this.game. Okay, why? Because game originally was a global variable, and now I'm making game encapsulated into this thing, right? So let me go back to my solution. I don't have any more errors, but there's one thing that's making me really freaking nervous, right? I am depending on my main game.ts file for all of this, right? Well, you know what? I'm okay with this being here because this is just all kind of functions or whatever and libraries. But these I'm going to be using in my game. So I'd like to put all these back as a reference locally inside each of my modules. So let's go back. So I'm going back to my Solution Explorer, and I'm going to pin it for a second because I need them. I need a little bit of this now. Go back to my play, and in the top of my play state, I'm going to start dropping in stuff. Well, I know I need, before I do anything else, I need my constants. So I need to have my constants, a reference to my constants in my game. I also need, and if you notice, the path is a correct path right here, right? I need also a reference to my button and my cloud and all that kind of stuff, but I need it in order. I need my cloud and my game object first. I need my game object first, then I need my cloud object, then I need my island object, then I need my my ocean object, sorry, then I need my plane object, and then I need a reference to my my button and my label, and I might as well put my scoreboard last because I need that too. Okay, cool. So I need all that stuff. Now you might say, wait, if you've got all these references in this, and this is calling my play state, you don't need it. You're right, I don't need it, but it makes me freaking nervous. And you know what TypeScript does? TypeScript says that if I've already got a reference to a library and you're referencing it again, it won't re-add it in, right? So nothing's wrong with that. But if I'm missing something, my game is going to break. It won't work anymore, right? Okay, so I'm going to save it all, save this all, right? And kind of unpin this one, right? Here I am with this. Okay, I've got my play class. Right? Now I got to instantiate my play object in order for my game to work like it used to, right? Let's go back to game and just make it work the way it used to without a new state. Okay? So here I am, and down in here I need to do this, but in order for me to do that, I got to instantiate my play state, which is down here. So I'm going to say, and also I want to make it a global object. So I'm going to call a new object. Here's my game objects now, and I'm going to say var play. Right, is of type states dot play. That's my new object. It's a gameplay state, right? Now I've made a reference to it here in the global scope. Why? Because down here I want to be able to access my play state inside my game loop, right? And I also want to instantiate here inside main like we did before. So I'm going to go play is equal to new states dot play. Okay, this right here should kick off my game if I've done everything correctly. There's one line because this encompasses everything my game is. It's one call and it happens here. My update happens here, and I still meter and update my stage every round, every frame, right? And I still do all this, but this stuff is just all setup stuff that has nothing to do with my game state. This is just general setup stuff. Let me run this thing now. If I've done everything correctly and there are no errors, then I'm going to run just fine. Let me refresh. Okay, cool. Look, I've got my game running now, and it's running independently in its own class, right? And if I die, it stops. Now I'm ready to do the rest of my game states. You guys get it? What I've done. So my first piece before I create my game states is I need to encapsulate my new class called play. This is my new game state. And if you look at it here in the middle, right, you look at what it does. It's just everything I put into my game before, right? If you look at it from a JavaScript perspective, I've got a lot of prototypical functions and so on that are embedded inside my JavaScript. But it's one big file. And the great thing is it's inside of an anonymous self-executing closure, which allows me to encapsulate all of my variables so they're not in the global scope anymore, right? All my game variables, my clouds, all that stuff is here. And when I instantiate my object, right, the first time, all these things are there, ready to go. Okay, cool. Now, how do I do this game state thing anyway? Well, I need a couple of constants. So let's go back to my constants for a second. So here's my constants. And right now we have these constants here. We have some player lives and whatever. I'm going to create some state constants, right? Okay, so my constants, and I'm going to call this, I export, make it a little bigger for you guys to see. A variable, well, I'm going to treat it as a constant, called play, right? And I'm going to give this a number, right? My number is going to be equal to 0, right? So, and I don't want to just give it play, I want to make it play state. Okay? Export variable, I want to give this other one the menu state. Well, hold on a second. Doesn't the menu state come before the play state? I would say yes. So then I would switch these around to make sure that they're in the same place. Just follow me here. I know you guys aren't knowing what I'm going to do yet. You will. So my menu state is 0. My play state, I'm just going to give it a value. And my play state is equal to 1. You could also use an enum for this if you're good with enums. I'm going to put them as constants for now, though. Okay, so export var, and then my menu state, my play state, and I have my game over state, right? Game over state. I don't have an instruction state. I'm going to let you guys do that one. Okay, cool. So menu, play state, and game over state. I'm going to kind of say these are my states constants. This is my game constants, if I can spell. Still good? These are my stage constants. And this is my font constants. Huh? What do you think? Okay, I've got a major change happening, guys. What should I do now? GitHub, right? I got to do GitHub, because if I don't do GitHub here, right, we're going to be messed up. So I'm going to go changes. Look at all these changes I made. I'm also going to add in my new play state, make sure that's included. I'm going to say encapsulated game into play state. Commit, home, and I'm going to say unsync commits sync. So now you guys got all that. Now this is a really key piece. See what I've done? I've created a class that actually calls upon other classes, right? That's what I'm doing. I've created my own custom classes for playing and for all my objects, and now I'm calling them into my custom class called play, And then I'm calling my custom class as an object inside of my game. Here it is. Okay, cool. This is the first piece. So now that I've done this, I don't want to do this, right? This is like, it's not main anymore. I want to do this main stuff only one time, right? If and only if I have a change of state. I want to go here, right? So I'm going to call this, I'm going to rename this function change state. So I'm going to refactor, rename. I'm going to call this a change state function, right? And when I do that, of course, it renames this up here to change state, right? Well, this function, I wanted to take a variable, right? So I'm going to make this a variable called state. That's going to it's going to listen for, right? Bear with me here while I'm doing this, right? Okay, well, that means I need to send in whatever the current state is to this variable, which means I need a current state variable. So I'm going to go back up here to game objects, and I've got I'll call them state variables, right? And one of them is going to be called current state. I'm going to say var current state, right? And what is it? It's going to be a number, right? And right now, I'm not going to set it to anything, right? But it's a current state. So that's the first thing I need to do. So when I say I want to send my state, my current state into my change state method. So that's what I'm going to do, right? Right now, there's no number to it. Okay, I don't have a current state. Well, I'm going to set a current state. So I'm going to say my current state, right, is equal to constants. Here we go. So it starts off. Dot what? My game state for now. My play state, right? Now that equals to 1, right? It's just a number. It's an enumeration, if anything, to tell me, to make sense to me what it is. It's just any number you want to make it. You can make it so that play state is a 5 or a 4 or a 10, right? I just used my constants to say that, well, you know what? My menu state is a 0, my play state is a 1, and my game over state is a 2. I'm setting arbitrary numbers in order of my states, right? Okay, cool. Going back. So this is cool. So I go into my current state function. This is it. Now I want to look at my state, whatever I get in here, right? And it's, of course, going to be a number. That's what I'm listening for, right? And in my current state function, I want to kick off an action. So when I kick off my current state, right, whatever my current state is, I want to kick off an action, whatever that action is going to be. Well, how do I do that? I'm going to use a switch statement to switch through what kind of state it is. I'm in. So I'm going to go switch. I'm going to switch my state, right? And of course, it's going to be inside some curly braces, and I'm going to have a few cases. Case, right? What's my first case? Menu state. And I can use this again. So menu state. Case menu state, then I'm going to do something and then break, right? Case constants dot play state, then I'm going to do something else, right? Case constants dot game over state, right? Well, then I'm going to do something else. Okay, makes sense? There's my finite state machine in a nutshell. I'm checking for the case. Now I got this play state right here. Look, here's my play. What am I going to do? I'm going to take this piece right here, cut it out, and put it into my play state right here. Well, I can't always do a play update. This would be bad. So what I need to know is, what's my current state function? What is in my current state that I'm in? But I already have a kind of a current state variable that tells me what state I'm in. So I need a current state function or current state method or current state class. Call it what you like. I'm going to call mine current state function. I'm going to put this at the top. Now this is the trick. Watch me here because this is key. Current state function. What type of variable is it? It's going to be a method or it's going to be a class. But you know what? My classes are all going to be messed up. They're going to be different. One's going to be a play class. One of them is going to be a game over class, which is totally different than the play class. One is going to be a start screen. Man, they're all different. I can't use some kind of pattern here. So I'm going to cop out and use any. Because I don't know what it's going to be. Right? That means it could be any variable. It could be any type. I'm still typecasting it. I'm just cheating a little bit. Actually, what I'm doing is I'm using the JavaScript default any. That's what I'm doing. All right, here I am back down here. I know that I have this current state function, right? So what do I want to do? I want to state, here's my play. I instantiate my play state, and then here I say, my current state function now, right? My current state function is equal to play. So what am I doing here? I'm saying my play is an object, and I want to, it's a reference type. And I'm going to take my object and create an alias for my object right now that I'm going to call it current state function. That's my alias, right? Why? Because in my update now, I can't just do play update because it's not going to be my play state all the time. I'm going to do current state function update. I'm going to update whatever the function that's currently in play, my current state, that's what I'm going to update. So whatever my current state is, for my play state, I'm going to update that. If I'm in my game over state, I'm going to update that. If I'm in my menu state, I'm going to update that. That's how this thing works. Okay, lots of changes, right? I got my state machine working, and I set up my menu state right here, my play state, and I call my change state function here, right, upon when I'm done my initialization. Okay, cool. Let's save this thing. And let's run it like it is. And if I've done everything correctly, I'm going to run cool. I haven't added anything else, any new objects, so I don't have to save anything new now. I'm just going to start playing. All right, let's see if it compiles first of all. Okay, lots of refactoring. Let's refresh. Hey! Huh? I go down here. Yay! Right? I go down here, and I lose some lives, and then I stop. I'm at the same place I was before. Let's check for errors. Because now I'm stopped, right? Here's my JavaScript console. This is important. I got no errors going on. We're good. So all I've done here is I've created some kind of rigmarole to start off my game. I'm saying right now I'm starting off in my play state because I don't have a menu state. Do I have a menu state? No. Do I have a game state? A game over state? No. Do I have an instruction state right now? No. All I have is my play state. That's all the only class I've created. Okay, let's make the next one. How do I do that? Well, now it's easy. Now this is the easy part. This is the fast part. Okay, here's my states. Let's make my game over state first. That's the first one I want to do. So I want to take this, right click, add. I want to add new TypeScript file, and I'm going to call this game over in lowercase. Okay, cool. I got a kind of a play state right now. Here's my play state. I'm just going to move this over here for a second. And in my play state, I'm going to take all this crap, Control A, Control C, and move it over to my game over state. Here's my game over, and Control V. Now my game over, my only error I have is the name of my file, my name of my class, which is just called play. I got to change this to capital G, capital O for game over, right? Okay, now it's identical. So one state, it's like the other state, right? Okay, cool. One state's like the other state. Okay, do I need a plane in my game over state? No. Do I need an island in my game over state? No. Colors, or ocean, yes I do. Scoreboard, not really. I'm not going to use my scoreboard. I'm going to use something else. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to get rid of my my clouds, my island, and my plane. Right? And all I'm going to have is an ocean. See what I'm doing? I'm taking things away from my game state, right? Now, in other times, you won't be able to do this. You have to do something different. Okay, cool. Now, see how I got all these errors? Well, you know why? Because I don't need all this stuff. So I'm going to get rid of it all. So that's the first piece, right? And you know what? Since I don't got all of that, if I go into my update function, well, you know what? I don't need to do an update for my scoreboard anymore, right? So this isn't here anymore. And I don't need to do any of this checking collisions. All I need to do is my ocean update, which is right here. That's the only thing that's going to be in my update function. Okay, if I don't need that, then I don't need my collision class, which is this big collision class here, right? I don't need this one. And if I don't need that, I don't need my distance function, so I get rid of that too. Almost. Right? And I only got this, my ocean, and it's just rolling. Okay? Okay, cool. So I've got my state. All it does is this little thing here. All it has my ocean scrolling in the background. That's all it's going to do. There's no sound. There's no plane. There's no nothing. Right? Okay, now how do I transition from one to the other? All right. Well, let's go back. Oh, it's not so easy, right? Okay, so here's my game over state. I've created it. Let's do all the piece parts that I need to make this go first. Okay, so I go back to my Solution Explorer. I'm going to pin it up here. I'm going to go back to my index.html. I got to do all these piece parts. I'm going to take my game over state. I'm going to include it in my state. Right now, my game over state, right? I can get only to it from my play state. So it's got to be above my play state. Why? Because I got to be able to call it, right? My play state calls my game over state, which means my game over state has to exist before my play state does. Okay, cool. So that's where it's got to live. That's the first thing. Second thing, my game.ts file, I've got to put a reference to that as well. It's going to be in the same level. So here's my game over state. It's got to be called before my play state. It's got to know about it. Okay, cool. Now inside my game class, my game.ts class, or my file, I've got to instantiate my variable, right? And it's got to be before I do my play. So var game over, right, is states.gameover. Okay, so I've got my variable game over. Okay, cool. I've got everything so far. All right, now I'm going to go down here in my play state, and inside my game over state, I'm going to do the same thing I did over here. I'm going to say game over, right, is equal to new states dot game over state, right? Okay, and now I want to do my current state function to update is no longer the play state, it's my game over, right? Cool, but how do I transition from this? How do I change my state from this to this? Well, I got to return something out of here, right? I got to make sure somehow that I return. Well, there's a couple ways to do this, right? I could call it so that in my game loop, I can check to see if my game state has changed, right? And if my game state changes in my game loop, then I switch states. But in order for me to do that, I got to have a state changed or is state changed method associated with either my class, right, or my as a global variable. So let's add it in right now as a global variable to make it easy. So here's my state variables. I'm going to make it a Boolean type variable. So I'm going to say state changed, right? And it's going to be of type Boolean, right? Right now I'm going to set it to false as a default. Okay, cool. Why? Because here in my loop I'm going to say if my state's changed, so after my stage update, I'm going to update my stage, right? Or before my state update, I'm going to go if state changed, right? If state changed is equal to true. Now you can put just if state changed because it is a condition, right? Then I'm checking conditions either true or false. And state change is a Boolean, right? So if my state change is true, then what do I want to do? I want to say my current state function, or my current change state to my current state. So change state to my current state, whatever my current state is. I'm calling my change state function, this method here. Change state, my current state. I'm passing that in. Why? Means that I'm listening for state changes every frame. So if I die, I'm going to swap out, and go into back out to my game to play my game again. Okay, but that means I got to trigger this state change. My current state has to change somewhere, right? And I also got to trigger the state changed from false to true, right? So And I also get a meter to say that when I do that, I got to set my my state change variable from true back to false. I'm able to do all these things, right? Because it's just flags that I'm setting up. Okay, let's do this now. I'm going to go back to my Solution Explorer here, and I'm going to go back into my play state. Here's my play state, and I have an area here that I check in here where I say if the scoreboard live is less than 1. I do all this stuff. I remove my children. Well, here's a great place to say state changed. My current state, because this is a global variable, current state is equal to my game over state. So constants dot game over state, right? And state changed is equal to true, right? Because now when I'm dead, I'm changing inside my play state. I'm changing my game over state, my current state to my game over state in my update. That's all I'm doing. And then I'm setting the flag that says, did I change states? Yes, to true, so that in my update I can detect it. So I can kick off my change state method inside my update. Okay, cool. So that means this is working. If this works, and if I go back to game, and I'm in my update, and I call this, and I go here, and I go back to my game over state, right? It's going to call this update, but it's going to run this thing again, right? Unless I stop it by saying something like, my state change is false when I come back over here. So I'm going to say state changed is equal to false. Restabilize everything again. That means I got to do that for here, too. And I might as well do it for over here to prepare. I don't have my function yet, but I will. And this, I'm going to instantiate my game over state, right? So that's what I'm going to put here. Instantiate my game over state. Game over state. Okay, cool. Let's try this out. If I've done things correctly, and if I put things in properly, I'm going to get this thing working to my game over. Let's try this out. So boom, start it off. I'm going to refresh, right? So make sure it's right. So boom, I die. I get my score, right? A couple score points. I die a couple more times, and boom, I'm in my game over state now. See how I flowed into it? All that stuff disappeared. It looks like everything disappeared, but actually I moved from one state to the other. Okay, I need to put some more stuff in here because this is pretty ugly, right? It's nothing, doesn't do anything. Let's add some stuff to my game over state. So here I can close this off for a second and my scoreboard and go back to my game over state, stop, right? And complete my game over state, and then I'll save it to GitHub. Because I made a couple of things here, right? And this is a big change. This is the biggest change I've made so far. Okay, so cool. I've got my game over state. On my constructor, I want to create a couple of labels. Here's my first one that I've ever done. Okay, so I want to have a label in my constructor, and it doesn't have to update. So I don't have to have it as in the as an instance variable. I can just do it right here. So I'm going to say something like this: var above the ocean, var my game over label is of type. What type is it? Objects dot label is equal to a new objects dot label, right? And the thing is going to say game over, right? And the position, this is great. I got my constants. Dot. It's going to be my center width, right? And except my center height, I'm gonna adjust it up so it's like around 200, something like that. Okay, that's my first game over label. Right now it's there, but I got to add it to the game game container. So I'm going to say this dot game dot add child game over label. Okay, that makes sense. Let's try this out first to see what happens. So here, I've done everything correctly. Refresh. I do my game. Bang, bang, bang. I die. And when I die, I go to game over, right? There's my game over screen, huh? What do you think? Huh? All right, that's cool and all, but I want my score. How do I transfer my score? How do I transfer my score from my play state into, how do I do that, into my state before I kill it, before I kill my play? How do I do that? Well, again, go back to game over, go back to global variables again in my game, right? So here's my game, and I got my state variables, I got my game objects, I got some other game, maybe some other game variables. I put some in here. One of them is going to be, I will call them score variables. I want to do a couple things here. I want to have my current score, right? So, or my final score and my current score, right? So I'll say var final score is a number, and right now I'm going to start off as 0, and I'm going to say my high score is a number that I'm also set as 0. Okay, cool. Okay, I got my final score and my this thing here. Well, what do I do? Well, going back to my game state for a second, which is my play state. Here's my play state. Before I do the state change down here, I pass it over, right, like this. It's a global variable, so it's nice and easy. So before I do my state change, I say something like this. Final score, right, is equal to score, right? So this dot scoreboard dot score, whatever that is. So I'm passing it back into my game state. That's all I'm saying. Okay, now, you know what? In here, I might as well check to see if my high score, if my final score is bigger than my high score. And if it is, I want to set my high score to my final score. So might as well do that here too. So if final score is greater than my high score, well then I want to say my high score is equal to my final score. Okay, cool. Now that I've got this, let's close this up. I can go back to my game over state and say this. I've got my game over label, and now I'm going to put a few more labels in there. I'm going to say my var, my final score label is of type objects.label, which is a new objects.label that's going to say score or final score, and I'm going to have a value to it, final score plus, right, my final score that's going to come from my main class, right, plus my x and y coordinates, which is still going to be constants dot screen center height, center width, I mean, right? And instead of 200, it's going to be a little bit lower than 200. Let's add another 100, so it's going to be around 300 for now, right? We'll have to adjust these later on. Okay, now I got a this.game.addChild, and I'm going to say final score label. Okay, might as well do the same thing for my high score label. So I'm going to go do this, and this will be high score, and this will be high score label, which I'll just redo by doing this. And instead of at 300, we'll put that at 400 for now. So game over, final score, high score, and this got to be also high score. Oops, if I can actually spell. Okay, cool. Let's try that out now. So I've got a couple more labels on my game over screen. I'm going to run it and refresh, right? Bang. bang, 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 bang. Okay, high score. Now I can't play again, right? And I need to move all this up because this looks too low for me, right? So let's move it up all by about 100 each, right? So I go to stop. I go to this. I'll go to 100, 200, and 300 to make them all equally spaced. What if I wanted to make my game over label actually larger? Well, there's some challenge to do that because I'm using the label class. I could say something like this: game over label dot font, right, is equal to a new font, so 60 pixels, right, consoles. But once I do that, right, I got to do this other stuff too. I got to say game over label dot regex is equal to the game over label dot get measured width, right, times 0.5, and I got to do the same thing with game over label for the height, because if I don't do this, then it's going to be offset, because it measures the width based on what originally I had there, and my original constants for my my label is 40 pixels, so it already pre-measured it, and that's why I'll get an error. So this is measured height, and now that I've done that, let's test that one really quickly. So bang, bang, bang. Let's get a label, score, 200, and bang. So now my game over looks bigger. And so now I have a space for a button. Okay, I need to be able to go back. How do I go back? This is my condition to go back now. I got to create a button. I have a button, but I don't have an image, right? How do I get that really quickly? Well, in my examples, I actually have in my GitHub, if you could look at MailPilot version 14 or 11 that I put up there, I have inside of there, I have a bunch of other stuff in here for assets, images. I have this big image here, right? So I'm going to kind of copy this thing and go to downloads. I'm going to paste this thing. Right here it is. Here's my atlas. And inside my atlas, I'm going to go into my downloads, and I'm going to double click my atlas really quickly. And now here's my buttons, my instructions, my play game, and my try again. I'm going to rip one of these off right now. I'm using a sprite sheet, which I haven't shown you how to do yet, which I will next week. Right? So I kind of go in here, and I'm going to do a try again button right here. So I'm going to kind of rip this off right here. It's all ready to go for me anyway. Right? And like so. That's about right. And I'm going to save this as file, save as, what am I saving it as again? Of course, try again button, right? Try again button, let's go back over here. Here's my try again button. What am I going to do? I got it really quickly. I'm going to finish off. I'll go back to my assets, into my images. I got to add that button in, right? So I'm going to kind of drag and drop this try again button into my images, but I can't do that unless I've stopped recording. Let's go back to Solution Explorer and pin this for a second while I do that. Okay, that's cool. My try again button is here, but I have to add that into my assets here. I don't have a try again button, but I'm going to right now. I'm going to copy this and paste, and I'm going to call this try again button. And here's my try again button. Okay, I can unpin this now. That's cool. And now, inside my game over state, I'm going to create a new button that goes underneath these ones. I already made the button class var try again button, which is of type objects.button, which is a new objects.button with my string path. My string path, it's a button. It's just going to be called button, try again button. right? My x and y coordinates is going to be constants dot screen center width and 400, right? And then I got to add the button this dot game dot add child my try again button. Okay, that's cool, but now I need a an event handler for this button. So this dot, or sorry, try again button dot add event listener, and in my event listener, of course, I'm going to say something like this. It's going to be a click event, and when I click onto it, I'm going to call my try again button clicked, right? Try again button clicked event, and I need to put that down here. So here's my try again button clicked as a method. This is what this does, right? And inside here, when I click my button, what do I want to do? I want to change my states, right? So I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to say current state, right, is equal to what? My new state, right? Which is my constants dot a play state again, right? And then I'm going to say, and once I've done that, I can't change state from here. What I can do is do something like this. That's my first thing. I'm going to say also from here, when I click my button, I'm going to say game dot this dot game, if I can, dot remove all children, right? And this, and then the stage itself, right? Remove all children. I got to do that. And my current state is my play state. So once I've done that, which happens on click, I'm listening for play state changes. I should be able to go back and start. Let's try that out. If I haven't made a mistake, I'm rushing because the time is short. So let's refresh. If I've done it right, boom, boom, boom. I get a little bit of a high score. I go back, I die. Hey, there's no button. How come my button's not there? Did I add it to the stage?
Yeah.
I didn't add it to the stage.
What do you mean?
My button,
Oh, your button.
right? But you see what I'm saying? This is the button that I would add in. This my try game. Add my try again button. Here's my try again button. I got to go back to my game. Yeah. What do you mean? Sorry, did I do something wrong?
Sorry? Yeah.
Here's my play state. Do I have to do something wrong? It's not updating because it's a local button like this, my try again button, which means I got to add this in to my object as a button over here as an instance variable, which means I got to make this a public try again button, right? And if it's a public, it's going to be an objects.button, which means down here I got to add this in front of these objects so I don't do this anymore. Right? And I don't have a try again button. I've got to make it so it's this dot try again button. And that's cool. And that's this dot try again button. And this dot try again button here. And I don't have to update my button. Right? Huh? Sorry, I can't hear you. I'm acting what?
You have to remove the colon.
From where? Oh, here. Okay. Well, that's cool, but now my update, do I got to update my button? There's nothing to update, right? So that's cool. Let's try that out and see if that's the problem. I don't think so. There's something else going on. Probably not finding my button right now, and that's why it's giving me an error, and it's not doing what I have to do. I don't have my button. Let's take a look at my tools. My JavaScript console will tell me if I've got an error, and it says failed to load my try again button, right? Because try again button doesn't have an ending, which means that when I go to my games and I go to my states over here I try to, this try again button, my source, my assets, images, try again button isn't accessing. I can't get to it for some reason. And this is where I would do my troubleshooting in here. Clear? And this is how I would fix it after this.
Because all the other images are locked and it's still in the plus. If you right next to the images, you see it. What is that? What is that?
It doesn't mean anything. It means just that's for thing. That's from my GitHub. So I will complete the example for you, and I'll put it up on GitHub. Okay, the whole example, the menu, the thing, everything. Okay. I just don't have time. I knew I wouldn't.